Having a tank engine sitting in modern-day London is a strange sight, but Poplar here is just paying a visit back to where it grew up many years ago, so show some respect. Far before aeroplanes took to the sky, or skyscrapers towered overhead, 150 years ago, little Poplar and its long-lost siblings scuttled back and forth and revolutionised the commute in South London. It was technically the first of the famous 50 terriers, but as fate would have it, it also wasn't the first. Let me explain. Also, I apologise that Guide Rail has all too quickly broken its monthly schedule. When there are new instalments, they will still be on the first Friday of each month, but I'm afraid they won't be every month. The opportunity to create a stop-motion animation for the Bluebell Railway's Fenchurch 150 event arose, and I would be a fool to have passed that up. So my entire priority was on that, and hopefully there'll be more animations like that in future. That's okay though, because it's not the first time poor Poplar has been sidelined for Fenchurch. I explored the general history of Stroudley's Terriers in the Complete History of Stepney, but in 1872 Stepney didn't exist, so let's go back. These colourful little engines were designed to take on the underpowered services in South London, being light enough to handle the weak rails and quick enough to keep to the timetable. Stroudley dusted off his drawing book from his time at the Highland Railway, and drew up 3 designs very similar to the Lock-Gorm tanks that he had recently rebuilt. These Brighton-built engines became the A-Class, and they were named mainly after places in London served by the railway. Number 70 Poplar was meant to be the first finished, but after tests run in August 1872, they found the cylinder blocks to be faulty and over-fragile, like me. And the design was quickly altered to the ones that were still being built. Number 72 Fenchurch officially became the first to enter service in September, and Poplar ended up being the last of the first batch of 6, trailing behind in December. After the false start, Poplar proved very useful on the South London lines. So much so that once the tracks had been upgraded, the trains soon became too popular for the Terriers to handle. The D-Class tanks were introduced to help out in the busier seasons, but eventually took over altogether, the greedy things, and the Terriers retreated to the countryside to work branch lines and rural trains. Towards the end of the century, the LBSCR thought that their 50 Terriers were reaching their life expiry. They were very wrong. All but 15 of the class were destined to be scrapped. But then they clearly must have checked Facebook Marketplace and realised that maybe they could sell some on to new owners. The newly formed Rother Valley Railway, soon renamed as the Kent and East Sussex, bought Poplar in 1901 and had it sent to Brighton to be painted blue. They renamed it Bodiam after the new area it would be working in, and blessed it as the new number 3. Here it worked hard for 30 more years, so the lesson here is never let anyone tell you that your life expired. Then it was withdrawn and worn out, also like me, in 1931. It sat on an overgrown siding for nearly 2 years, with its classmate Rolvenden, before parts from that engine were dismantled and used to get Bodiam back into steam, which lost its name in 1935. 8 years later, and the boiler had had enough. Like me. Even though the Kent and East Sussex never became part of the Big Four, the Southern Railway helped them to fit a new one, and this became the last Terrier to be fitted with an A1X boiler. After the war, number 3 was put into a much brighter green, which it kept well after being absorbed into British Railways, though without the lettering on the tanks. For a brief time in 1951, It even took over as the famous Brighton Works shunter, whilst Morden was being overhauled. When the Kent and East Sussex Railway finally closed to passengers in 1954, Poplar/Bodiam/Number 3 was sent all over the place to do odd jobs, now numbered 32670. It moved from St Leonard's to Brighton and then to Eastleigh, where its last overhaul was in 1960. To put this into perspective, this is crazy because it's the same year that Stepney was preserved at the Bluebell Railway, yet here was another Terrier being overhauled for regular use. The workshop staff took a soft spot to the engine that had a guaranteed future, and parts such as the copper cap chimney were swapped out with Poplar to get Stepney back in better shape. Because of this overhaul, Poplar became one of the last surviving Terriers by running the Hayling Island branch, or as I like to call it, Terrier Island. After 90 years of loyal service, this became the Terrier's last hurrah because they were the only engines light enough to safely cross the old wooden swing bridge at Langstone Harbour. When this closed in 1963, the Kent and East Sussex Railway Preservation Group were quick to buy Poplar. It came back home under its own steam on the 10th of April 1964, and became an occasional runner from the 60s to the mid-70s. It had been stored in need of repairs in the 1980s, when the Terrier Trust was formed and bought 75% of the engine to secure its future preservation. This included building a brand new boiler for it to return to service in 2006, and more recently, for it to be overhauled again for its sesquicentenary in 2022. This was completed at the North Norfolk Railway, and the engine returned to be repainted just in time for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. This is the first time that the engine has been identified as Poplar, and painted in Stroudley's improved engine green in 121 years. I mean, of course, in pre-preservation it was rebuilt by the Kent and East Sussex with an A1X boiler. They removed the toolbox on the back and extended the coal bunker vertically. What I'm saying is it never wore this livery in this condition, but it has now, because history is made every day, and it's characteristic of Poplar's long and continued history. Usually, Poplar and classmate Noel can be found barking through the railway's base at Tenterden Town, which is definitely worth the visit for the unmistakable rural tone that you get with one of Colonel Stevens' light railways. The nearest mainline stations are Headcorn and Ashford, and buses operate between here, Maidstone, Tunbridge Wells and Hastings. Do wish them a happy 150th birthday and show your support to both the Kent and East Sussex Railway and the Terrier Trust, whose websites are linked in the description. You can also wish Fenchurch a happy 150th birthday at the Bluebell Railway Terrier Weekend on the 29th to 31st of July 2022, featuring guests like Poplar and Brighton from the Isle of Wight. If you saw the animation that I produced for the event, then I'm hoping to be at the railway myself on Friday the 29th, with some of the models used to make the animation. I bet many of you were expecting this to be the long-awaited complete history of Fenchurch, which is still on its way, but when Poplar went on display at Poplar Station on the Docklands Light Railway, I just had to give some credit to the one that was supposed to be first. Poplar. I know about Poplar. And hopefully now you do too. Huge thanks to my brilliant patrons, Alex Goodman, GBH Train, Donald 9 and Douglas 10, D0280 Falcon, Sean Tempest, Nat, Sam Bennett, Alco, Henry Forrester, GK, TR2000, Jay Malin, and Random Thomas Fan.